It's kind of wild. We finally got another game after so long. Pretty excited to see it come back to the original formula with the new additions we got with TSA. And honestly, for an action game made for the Wii, it's not half bad. No More Heroes 1 had perfect sidesteps, slowing time, kick to guard break enemies, meter management system going on with their beam katana, and yeah, the famous animation they got away with on a Nintendo console. There's a high and low stance, and if you attack an enemy with the same one, you'll clash. Then the stuns to go for those over-the-top wrestling moves, which then, yeah, went into the roulette system and then get the random buffs. Yeah, there was just enough here for the first game to have this satisfying loop. Surprisingly, it all came together pretty nicely. Plus, you end up fighting these unique over-the-top, memorable bosses. Only issue are the tedious side jobs that can harshly change the game's pacing. So let's see how the third game improves on the formula or return to form of what we liked so many years ago. This is Combat Overview. Here we go over the general controls, the main mechanics, what we use them on, and then seeing how it all comes together. We got our lights on square doing fast swipes, and unlike TSA where they'll loop into each other indefinitely, here you have to wait to reset to neutral, and then it'll start attacking again. I'm matching lights, and yeah, there's noticeable end lag after each combo. Pretty strange they held it back from what they just had, but yeah. Triangle is apparently our heavy attack, but from what I've noticed, it doesn't deal any more damage than our lights, probably even less than our lights honestly. It's more of a crowd control attack just like in TSA, and there's no enders chaining into it either. I tried testing if the heavy attacks at least led into stuns more often, like the extra startup and less damage overall will lead up to over the top wrestling moves for the real damage. But nah, nothing like that. No real give and take to weigh out your options really. Just mash lights to dish out consistent damage. And your charge won't empty often as you'd think, like in TSA where it really does show a difference when you're just mashing lights, but here, not too much. We also have grabs to set up those hype wrestling moves. The enemy has to be stunned first, which is fine. Thing is, grabs don't cancel out your basic attacks. So if you want to follow up on a stunned enemy on reaction to get that big damage while having iframes on it, like you would in like Sifu or Ninja Gaiden 2, well, it doesn't work like that sadly. You need to let your current attack play out completely before your grab will come out. And don't expect much from these iframes either, because as soon as it ends, you're completely vulnerable as you're standing back up in that little cutscene where you have no control. Enemies can and will hit you doing massive damage, so it's honestly more of a risk going for grabs than you think. Kind of backwards. Also, if you see an enemy guarding, our grab doesn't counter this, they'll just push you off like usual. So the classic rock, paper, scissors rules aren't here, and that kick to guard break we had back in 1 isn't here either, so yeah. At least our grabs work on stun bosses though. Onto defenses, holding out 2 guards and locks on at the same time, like Shaolin monks in that way. Can strafe around and all that. Blocking chips at your beam's energy instead of your health, a little meter management going on, but it's alright. Never bothered with guarding much, and there's no perfect guards here either, so it's kind of just there. There's a clash here too, it's fine. Enemy tells are pretty wonky and unreliable when it comes to knowing when they're active or not. There's no noticeable sound cues or a light flash on their attack like Bayonetta or Transformers. So it's hard to get a real read on their animations when it's the right time to dodge or, in this case, go for a clash. Right here, for example, we traded hits, which means we attacked at the same time and yeah, no clash happened. So it's kind of a toss-up. And it's not like one where you and the enemy has stances, making it clear how to play around this. But yeah, they took that out entirely here, so instead you'll get it by accident from mashing. And when you win, yeah, you're left completely wide open here too in that cutscene where you have no control. We also have a roll. I wouldn't call it a dodge because it doesn't dodge much. I'm mid-roll, but yeah, I'm still getting clipped. It's not like it's the end lag of it, it's during it. So it might be at the very startup where it's active for a split second, but even then, with the enemy's attacks not having clear cues, it's still a toss-up here too. And oh yeah, your roll doesn't cancel attacks mid-animation either. So even if it worked how you'd expect, you can't use it on reaction to perfect dodge. But hey, if you do manage to get one, you can get a guaranteed throw follow-up. And another thing, there's no ukemi. So you're forced to mash to get up just like No More Heroes 1, and even worse, just like Streetwise. Looking at the HUD, the heart is our health of course, the battery is our beam katana's charge. So for every attack you land and hit you block, it'll use this up. And yeah, to refill it, you gotta do that classic recharge. Now as you land those hits, this little kitten turns into a full-on grown tiger. And the 4 stages it has will add an additional attack for each of your light and heavy combo. But again, no enders or anything unlocks with this, so it still leans into the whole smashing lights. We do have cooldown skills to toss out just like in TSA. Hold out one and press the face button and there you go. But weirdly enough, they hold out on these for the first 4 hours, where they just hand them out back to back to back. Once you slow down anyone in the circle, or this other circle up above to shoot tracking beams, a drop kick and a force throw. And after that, well, there's no more in the entire game. So there's even less skills than TSA to experiment with. But yeah, these you kind of toss out and don't think about them again. No real unique answers for enemies with these, like Scarlet Nexus for example. And they leave you extremely vulnerable too, since you're stuck in a cutscene where you have no control, or iframes on startup or during it either. Yeah, toss these out at the start and go to the mashing. We do have that roulette still. There's a buff to grab enemies no matter what, stunned or not. This power armor for a bit, or this ability to mash on them even more, or cash, or upgrade points. They're fine, usually the cherry on top, but here the loop is so flat you really can't enjoy these too much when it does happen. Also, be sure to check the lab. I didn't know this was a thing for like half the game. You just get upgrades for your health, damage, meter, and cooldowns. No really useful moves, skills, or sabers to buy. Just little stat increases. When it comes to enemies, got these jobbers with swords. You see these a lot, and usually these kind of enemies are great as early game targets like Transformers and Hi-Fi Rush. But here you'll learn how off any consistent game can be. No real visual cues on their attacks, and you not being able to cancel anything at all on reaction. Yeah, there's a few more. Some to toss out shields. It's gotta go behind them and still mash on them. So it's all the same no matter who you fight. It's the same loop of toss cooldowns and mash. And when you're about to land the final blow, you'll go into this QTE doing the killer slash. It'll do a very wide swing which can hurt nearby enemies, but its hitbox doesn't match the visuals, so it's stubbier than you think. I gotta say the process overall was streamlined this time, going from boss to boss. Go to a new map, find these little fights sprinkled around. These give all the money you need pretty much. Deposit at the ATM and there you go, find a boss. You rarely have to do any odd job, which is a nice touch. And that's No More Heroes 3. I'm glad it made a comeback, but its gameplay is a mess to tell you the truth. The biggest issue you'll notice pretty quick is that nothing seems to work with each other. Lights and heavies don't cancel into each other. There's no delays or unique enders to chain into to mix things up or have any situational uses. You can't cancel into your specials, which they don't affect much either. Tossing enemies into walls doesn't do splat damage, or sending them into other enemies doesn't topple them over for crowd control. And you can't cancel into your roll to get perfect sidesteps like we could in No More Heroes 1, which even if it did, the iframe on our roll this time around is pretty questionable. And you can't cancel into grabs on reaction to capitalize on dazed enemies, to deal massive damage while using those iframes to collect yourself like any other action game with their glory kill finisher mechanic. Everything just feels separate and sectioned off from one another, so combat ends up being very laggy, overly committal, and just not very responsive, or fun to control in general, sadly. Kinda wild to say, but it's a step down from TSA, and that was already extremely bare bones. Since it took out the stand system, the guard breaks, and more I'm sure that I forgot about since last playing it. But you know what? Combat aside, just looking at the game as a whole, it still has that creative energy to play with all sorts of genres, starting things off with a beat 'em up, having a rhythm boss fight, or a turn-based RPG fight, or this first-person horror game thing going on exploring an empty school. The anime outros with title stingers too, right, in between missions. So combat may be rough, but it's really not the main reason why we enjoy Grasshopper games. It's for the fun they have with the medium of games. Always switching it up and subverting expectations of what games are and can be. And for that alone, they deserve some props for wanting to make a game that's just having fun. Messing with a little bit of everything gaming has to offer. So if you want No More Heroes, then we definitely got No More Heroes. Now let's save our world from intergalactic space punks already.